he's running the floor. I'm just curious how much that's how much that has been stressed for you guys running the floor, making those quick, decisive reads for tonight.
So
how much has that been stressed for tonight, running the floor and making those quick, decisive reads?
yeah, I think that's something for us that over the course of the year, has been a point of emphasis. I think offensively, it's the coach's job to try to put guys in a position where they can be successful. And as our personnel has changed, obviously, but that's been, I think, consistent with the different iterations of our team. The key to that is for us to be able to defensive rebound, and keep those guys off the foul line, because when you're taking the ball out of the net, or they're at the free throw line, it's hard to run. You're playing against the set defense, so obviously we want to get stops, but I think there's an additional layer to that, and a lot of that comes down to spacing. I think they're so good at eating space on the floor that if you're 2, 3, 4 feet, in the wrong spot, that could be the difference between getting a good shot or getting a tough shot.
What have you seen from Zach this season that's kind of enabled him, prepared him to play in these kind of moments in this game or Friday or into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think one of the things, because we talk a lot about Zach, or I do, about him being 19. He's played in big games in Europe. This time last year, a little later, he was playing against Monaco in the Euro Cup playoffs. And although there's obviously differences, I think his nervous system is such that he doesn't feel that maybe in the same way that a young player feels it. And I think you've seen that throughout the course of the season. Where he's had, if you look at his shooting, he may have had a tough shooting night in the first half, and he stays aggressive. So I think he's a confident guy. He's still learning. This will be a new environment for him, a new situation. But I don't think Zach's anyone. He's not a player that's afraid of the moment.
Your team has been through this playing tournament a few times over the last few years.
Right.
Is this environment or is this setting different in any way? Does having experience in this specific type of game an advantage for you guys in any way, or how might it be different from a regular kind of game?
Yeah, our team last year, of our top 7 guys in terms of minutes played over the course of the year, there's only one left, and that's Trey. Yeka, was a backup to Clint last year. He's obviously, moved into starting lineup. So I don't know how much, that experience for other guys on the team is relevant, but we have a lot of guys that haven't been in this. And 2 years ago, we were on the road. We've been on the road both times. So I think playing on the road is something that we should be comfortable with from that standpoint. But I do think every year is different.
When you guys have seen this Magic team 4 times this year, obviously 3 with the most of the regular guys playing. Just when you look back at those 3 matchups, do you feel like you've seen everything from the Magic, and do you feel like you've offered everything to the Magic, or is there still something to be revealed at this point?
Yeah, I think the way the schedule played out, playing them multiple times late in the year, is something that's relevant. When we played them earlier in the year, we were a very different team. So there's a learning process, from the last time really we played them here. I think is probably one that you can borrow from, and I consider this Game 7 of the playoffs, and I think that can be a positive thing. So as far as game plan situations, yeah, I think obviously from a tactical standpoint, you look at those games and you learn from them, and you make some decisions based on that, and sometimes they're the right decisions, and they work. They don't work. Sometimes maybe you feel like it's the wrong decision and it quote unquote works. So I think the biggest thing is whatever the game plan is, that your team understands it and you buy into it, and your focus goes to execution. And the development of a plan is something that I takes place based on your experience. And we've had those experiences with them, recently.
What's it like shifting gears after the two trades? You trade two of your main guys, you get new guys back, and in the last 2 months, just kind of having to maybe readjust everything. What's that process been like to bring you here now?
It's been a big part of, I think, the evolution of our season, and I think the way that our team handled it, beginning with losing Jalen Johnson, and then DeAndre, who was having a terrific year, and we're excited for him and his opportunities. The players that we brought in are different. We're not that was 6'9" and 6'8", but we've got some guys that we believe in, and I think they've been able to. Our group is managed in a short period of time, I think, to come together and formulate a new identity that's unique to them. And again, someone like Onyeka too. We've had guys step into different roles. We're starting Mo Gay, who was playing in the showcase in December. I don't think he anticipated that. We didn't either. And even at the beginning of the year, trying to see where Zach and Dyson, two young guys that had never started, in this league before, and their evolution. I think the guys that have been, I mentioned Zach, Dyson, Trey, obviously, they've done a good job of adjusting and embracing, to guys that have been traded and added, as well as the roles of people that have departed. And that's a credit to them. And it's also a credit to George, Karis, and Terrence, as far as how they've embraced the young guys. Those are guys that have playoff experience. So that combination is something I think our guys, they may not be as aware of it as I am, but I think they should, they need to be commended on that and what they've done and the fact that we're here tonight.
Quinn, when you take a look at this Orlando team, of course, Bankero and Bogner are going to be the first two guys you're going to try to limit. But is there anybody else that specifically sticks out to you when you watch this team as a high-level impact player?
Yeah, there are a number of guys. And the thing about their group is they really understand and execute in their roles. Wendell Carter, his ability to rebound has been something that's been unbelievably impactful. Cole Anthony has had stretches where, he's capable of winning a game and gets those opportunities. Black comes in, and really impacts the game defensively. KCP and the shot making. So I think they're a team that they fit together really well. I think they know each other, and I think both Paolo and Franz do a good job of making efficient decisions and allowing those guys to impact the game in areas where they have the ability to do that and do it at a high level.
Coach, following up on that about Paolo and Franz. Paolo has had 30 plus in his 3 games versus you guys this season, but then there's Franz who can also go for 30 on any given night. What kind of stress does that put on your defense, having two guys 6'10" that can really score the basketball?
Yeah, they've had 30 against a few teams, but obviously that's productivity. We don't have a ton of matchups because of our size, so I think for us to defend, we've really got to do it collectively, and we've got to be disciplined when Paulo's in a spot where he's efficient. We've got to make sure that we don't foul, and let him get to the line and become even more efficient. And Franz is such a unique player with his size and his ability to get to the rim, his versatility on the post, attacking in transition, playing pick and roll, both as a handler. He's one of the best pick and roll screeners in the league. Just the feel he has for changing angles and whether he rolls or whether he pops. Those seem like subtle things, but they really they put a lot of stress on your coverages. So, clearly they're not players that you go into the game with, at least for us. We're giving up size in both those matchups, no matter what we do. Maybe, with Mo. If Mo's on Paolo, he has length, but he's given up a few pounds. So, to your point, that's not easy. And it is something that I feel strongly that we have to execute collectively, you know, in order for those guys for us to make it hard on them, you know, and try to make them as inefficient as possible.
Coach, obviously you knew of Dyson Daniels before he got to you, but when he got him in your building, what impressed you about him, and what continues to impress you about him and what he's done for you?
Yeah, he was someone I felt really strongly about before we got him. You know, that you could see, you know, a guy that had an upside, for lack of a better word, that's there. You can't see kind of the maturity and the mental toughness until you're there up close. He's one of the more competitive guys that I've ever been around, and it's harder. You got to watch a little closer to see that because he can be stoic at times. But I think he's what he's done this year. You know, obviously you see the defense, but even the way he gets in the paint a lot, and that's a big. That's important to us, you know, to put pressure on the defense that way. That's something that I think he's really embraced, you know, and then shooting the ball, just giving him green lights, and I don't care if he misses. I mean, I'd rather have him make it, but I don't think that, you know, I'd like for him not to think about whether or not he should shoot if he's open, you know, and that's something we really try to encourage. And then he puts the time in, you know, you don't see someone's work ethic on a daily basis until you're with him. And I think it shows by, you know, what he's done over the course of the season and his development. He's put that work in. Our staff has really embraced that. It's been this year for us has been a lot about development. And sometimes development, you want to find the intersection of development and winning. You know, you don't want to sacrifice winning for a player to develop. And in our case, there's been an intersection with those guys. Whereas they've grown, they've helped us, you know, be a better team.
Thanks, Coach.